right. Hey, y'all. Welcome.
Hello.
Welcome to the Empty Nest Quest. Well, we're going to do our life updates, but I do just need to update y'all that Jennifer and I are a little low energy today.
Oh my gosh.
We're trying to perk up.
I feel like I need a shot of espresso just to get going.
But then we're too old. We can't do that.
No, we can't do that. No. And we have little update. Melinda and I are actually participating in the Spark in the Dark 5K this evening.
Yes.
So we interviewed, you guys heard that interview with Kathy. So Samaria.
I know.
Love her so much too. So anyway, that's going to be a lot of fun.
That will be fun.
Yeah,
that will definitely. Maybe we should record it after. We'd be
I know.
We just walked.
I know.
We feel so
we'll
good.
have to do a little blurb on
it.
Instagram.
Let's do
it. But yeah, what's been going on with you? It's been a crazy week in the world.
It really has been. So as we're recording, it is the weekend after the hurricane. Let's say Helene, because we're in the season. I hope there aren't more to share. But so it just felt kind of sad and tough. And because we're from the South, we've had a lot of friends impacted. So I think that's probably been the biggest thing. The little beach town that I grew up going to, I think my parents just sold their place there in 2022. And it's almost all gone.
Wow, that's so sad.
I know. My dad drove down there on Friday, and I was just trying to imagine being in his truck with him. He's so precious. So he's like driving down. He just has his phone hanging out the window, and he just recorded all the way up and down the road.
Bless him.
And went down there to just check on his friends.
Oh my goodness.
Buy some fish from his favorite little fisherman.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's
truly been devastating.
It is so weird. He lost his bearings because no landmarks. They're just all gone.
That's crazy.
It's very weird. But so yesterday we went to the Georgia game, and it felt nice to do something normal.
Yeah,
and see
just some normalcy.
Yeah,
so that was
good. That was fun. It's always fun to go to the games with the girls.
Yes, it is. And Georgia won, so that was good.
Yes. So what about y'all?
Yeah, so my in-laws, my husband is from Augusta, Georgia, and so they were hit super hard by the hurricane. And so my in-laws were without power and water. They had some damage to their house, but it wasn't too bad. Definitely livable, but they with no water and no power. And so my husband, Mike, was able to get to them last Sunday. The roads were blocked to their house for a couple days. So when he was able to get to them, he went and picked them up. And so they've been staying with us this week. So they're super sweet and just, they're easy to live with. I'm very fortunate to have wonderful in-laws. And so she's been great. She's been cooking, and so it's been good. So yeah, but I know they're anxious to get home, and
definitely.
It's really sad to see what has happened. I just feel so sorry for all those people, and it's just it's really sad. So but yeah, other than that, everything's been going good, just plugging right along. So yeah.
Do you have a fall break at your school?
We do. We have a fall break. It's coming up this weekend. So we have a 3-day week with conferences, and then we're off school all day Friday and the next Monday.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. I think Oconee is too. So it's Clarkie and Oconee are off
same weekend this year.
Same weekend.
That's good.
So yeah, it'll be good. Nice little break. Then I swear after that, I feel like Christmas will be here before we know it. And then it's the end of the school year again. I'm like, it just goes by so fast.
It really does.
And everyone always says that the older you get, the faster the year goes. And I swear it's true.
But it is true.
It is.
I don't know why that is.
So true. So anyway, but it's been good. So
don't you remember, just in regard to that, don't you remember when at every stage it feels like I remember when the kids were really little and people would be like, oh, just wait. The next stage goes even faster. And you'd be like, how? Because this stage was so fast.
Right.
And then I remember when they were in middle school, people would be like, just wait.
Yes.
Until high school. And then in high school, people would be like, no, you have no idea. College is so much faster.
Yes.
And it's been true at every stage.
So true.
Even though we've been, I feel like, really present, I have no regrets about us trying to be present in that season and give it all of our attention. It it just is true.
Yeah.
You just kind of have to savor what you can.
And that's what I'm telling, like when I see new moms with little ones, I'm like, oh, just, absorb every second. And I always tell them too, I'm like, don't get stressed out about anything right now.
And they're looking at you like, have you lost your mind? Do you see this kid?
I know. And I'm like, believe me, what they eat, what they snack on, when they nap, when they sleep, doesn't mean anything. Don't stress. Because right now, I mean, when we've got, 20 somethings, it's like, oh my gosh, now they are making like life changing decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when the real stress comes.
I do remember feeling worried about all that, though. It just is a reminder of like, there's always at every season of being a parent to me so much information coming in. And I think this is true even if you're not a parent, just as a person that's trying to do your best to be a good person, to be successful, give generously, all the things. You feel so much external pressure, and you really have to run that through the internal mill and go, okay, what of this is going to matter and what's not? And I think I did tend in the younger years to let too much of it matter.
Yes. Oh, definitely.
And I'm glad that as they got older, thankfully Johnny's super grounded. And he'd be like, babe, you got to let go of that.
Right.
Okay. Yep. You're right. Because I've learned this lesson.
Yep.
In the younger years.
Letting it go.
Yeah. So that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we are hitting a subject today, and not the most fun, but definitely necessary. So we're talking about divorce in midlife. And so obviously I'll kind of take the lead on this because I'm the divorced person over here. Melinda is in a wonderful marriage with a great husband. So,
but I will say regarding that if you're listening and you're in the same marriage that your first marriage, I think there's so much wisdom in listening to divorce and its lessons, because one of my favorite quotes that's honestly been like a lighthouse for Johnny and I in our marriage is that every marriage that no matter how long your marriage is, has within it little bitty divorces, because you keep changing, you grow apart, and then when you grow apart, you get to choose whether or not you're going to grow back together or not. And so sometimes those little mini divorces, that's not my original quote. Margaret Mead is an anthropologist that said this, but that, sometimes it ends in what we know is divorce. And sometimes we just have them inside our marriage and come back together. And we have certainly had really challenging times where we sought counsel and we're like, how are we going to come back together on this? And so I do think that what you can learn from friends like you that have been through the true hardship of divorce is that how to address it in your marriage when you have hard times.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm really thankful that you're going to share.
Absolutely. And, I think by sharing, you just make it a topic of conversation. And by doing that, it's just no more in the dark, because the topic is there. It's kind of like mental health in our country. The topic is there and people are suffering, but people just don't talk about it because it's kind of a taboo word, and I feel like divorce is too. It was hard. I come from a divorced family. And so for me to say that word, it just conjured up so many emotions that I didn't even know were still there. And so for me to initiate the divorce, and I know that some of you out there, you are the ones that are going to initiate it. And sometimes your spouse is going to. So either way, just thinking about all those emotions, especially if you come from a divorced family, it kind of takes on a whole other role. Because I had to relive some of the emotions that I had as a child when my parents went through a divorce. So, and just knowing that, wow, I'm creating this, I'm doing this. This is because of me. It that was a lot. But just to go back just a minute, I did a little bit of research, and as of May of this year in 2024, 42% of marriages, first time marriages, end in divorce. And to me, that was a little bit lower than I expected because I thought it was more towards 50%, but that's just first marriages. And the average age of a first marriage is 8 years, which I was like, wow, that is really short, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, it's short compared to our standard of forever, right?
That's true. That's true. Because I was married almost 20 years. And so, and we were high school sweethearts. So we had been together, you know, at least 5, 6, I think about 6 or 7 years before that. And so it was, you know, a big chunk of time that I had obviously invested a lot of time and had 2 children. And so it's, you know, it was a decision that was not taken lightly. And it was one that took a lot of prayer and a lot of time. And so, but every, you know, in saying that, every divorce begins with a love story. And so I think that's so important to remember that, you know, to try to honor, even though it is such a traumatic, emotional time, to try to honor that love story that, you know, obviously the person that you married was a good person, or you thought at the time that they were. So honor that, especially if you have children. I think it's so important to do that. So important to not bash the other person, no matter what. And I still, you know, try to honor that because that person, that is their dad.
Yeah.
And, you know, that he will always be their dad, you know?
Well, and I feel like, you know, we talked about this in other ways too, like with friendship, that every relationship, it gives us something, right? Like you said,
Right.
It starts with love, it starts with connection. Just because it doesn't end there does not void the whole relationship
absolutely.
of all the richness it gives.
So many good times and in love. And so, but I was in a place in my marriage, I was very comfortable. And a comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there. And it is a place I could have stayed in for the rest of my life. But I was very, very lonely.
Mm-hmm.
And I've, you know, told you before that really this feeling of, or really the realization of, I don't need to live like this forever, came after my heart surgery. That it really, after something like that happens, and I've heard other people say this after an accident or something life-changing that happens, it's just a wake-up call.
Big time.
And to me, it was a wake-up call that it was really a realization that we were living really very separate lives, going down different paths. You know, I would go on vacation with the kids by ourselves, and this was happening for years. And that's not something that I wanted, you know, looking ahead, I was like, wow, the kids are growing up, you know, am I really going to go on vacation by myself forever? You know, that's not something that I wanted to do. That's not what I saw in my future. And so it was not taken lightly at all. It was something that I thought about for such a long time and prayed about. And I had in my mind, as I'm sure I've heard a lot of people say this, well, I'm not going to do anything until the kids graduate from high school.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you feel like, I would be curious to hear, because if there's somebody, you know, listening, it feels like this could be helpful if they're in that place.
Right.
So you had that pressure, you know, that what if we wait till is it better to wait until the kids graduate,
right,
whatever stage of life? And then when you said that about being comfortable, it made me curious about, and if you feel comfortable naming, like, what were the things that you felt like, okay, it's better because at least we have this, because I'm scared of this? Like, what were the things that felt too scary to think about disrupting, and what felt comfortable enough to sort of make you feel like I can roll with this?
Absolutely. So I was terrified of, I was a school teacher, and so very immersed in the community. And, I was thinking, oh my gosh, what is the community going to think? What is my family going to think? And most of all, my children.
Mm-hmm.
And the bottom line is really the only ones that you owe anything to are your children.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is what I had to come to grips with. The only people on this earth that I know owe any type of explanation and that I need to care what they think and feel and how they navigate these rough waters that are ahead of us are our children. So, but I had, this was during the holidays, or right before the holidays. And we went to see my mom and my stepdad. My dad and my stepmom had that mixed up. And my stepmom and I went out, just the two of us. And she said something to me that really made all the difference. And she just said, you can leave, right? Like, you don't have to stay in
Instead
this.
of hanging in, she could see you waiting.
She could. And she was like, if you think if this is better off for the kids, it's not. Like, if you think you're going to create a mess for the kids, you're in a mess. Mm-hmm. You just can't see it because you're in the mess, but you're in it and the kids are in it with you.
Yes.
So you're not creating anything. It's already a mess. And I was like, wow, you are so right. Why am I going to wait? Why am I going to wait? It would have been, 2 to 3 more years that I would be in this relationship that I knew was not going to last.
Mm-hmm.
And so for her to actually say that to me, and I heard it, and it kind of gave me permission that, wow, okay, I can do this. I can do this.
Well, and that somebody else acknowledged that what you were in, it's almost like she validated the discomfort, because there's a lot you could name, like you said, and maybe other people, without even meaning to, were encouraging you to stay by saying things. Well, like, at least you have this. Well, at least you have that. At least.
Right. You're not, it's not like, you're being abused or, well, yeah, that's true. But to me, as I feel like too, abuse can be verbal as well. And silence is deafening.
Oh, yeah.
And I have never, I think I've said this before on the podcast, that I never realized until I went through that period of my life how lonely you can be and you're not by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I never realized that.
I feel like that's probably the thing that I have heard from my friends that have gone through divorce, is that was the tipping point to realize I'm living in a house with this person and I feel more alone than I would feel if I could just be alone.
100%.
It's like the perfect quote is what you said about the silence.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that I hear that you said in that was that old quote we've all heard about, that it's like they say sometimes, we tend to avoid the big shift we need because it's easier to be comfortable in the mess we're in because we know this mess.
Right. You're comfortable in the mess.
Right. Than to go to the unknown, quote, mess. But that, the end of this road if we stay the course, it's
Right.
like we know what this story keeps
Yes.
playing out as
Yes.
if we don't make any changes.
Exactly. And I think that allowed me to embrace the mess that, I had to marinate in the reality that I was creating this mess. I was creating this personally, financially, in every way. I was creating this mess.
You mean the decision to divorce,
right?
Mm-hmm.
I was making that decision to divorce. And, this mess that I call it in my life and in my children's life could potentially turn upside down. But then I was like, okay, fact check. It already is.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think for 1 second that your children don't realize this, you're not giving your children enough credit.
Mm-hmm.
They realized that this was not normal. And what I was doing by staying is I was setting an example for my children that they were expected to stay in uncomfortable, dysfunctional relationships.
Yeah.
That's what I was telling them without telling them. I was showing them. And we know our children, they learn most from our actions and not our words.
100%.
And so by me staying, that is what I was telling them. And so it was, I had to accept the fact that yes, I was causing this mess. But if I did not cause this mess, what example was I setting for my children? And I heard somebody give this visual. I'm a very visual learner, and I always remember this. They said, it was as if I was drowning in the shallow end of the pool. And all I had to do was stand up. But standing up was the hardest step. And it really was. But once I stood up, I was not sitting back down. And I think that is what led me to where I am now. That once I made that decision, I took so long to make that decision that I knew it was the right decision to make. And I think I've told you this story before about how I knew in around March that eventually the marriage was going to end.
Yes.
But I did not. I'm really careful. I try to be very careful with my words and with the timing. And so from March until I've told him, it happened to be New Year's Eve that year. So until December 31st that year, I prayed every single day. I mean, I can't even tell you how many times a day I prayed the exact same prayer every single day for 8 months. Perfect timing, perfect words. Perfect timing, perfect words, over and over and over again. Driving down the street, at school teaching, at grocery shopping, wherever I was, perfect timing, perfect words. It was truly consuming for 8 months, every single day. And it truly was perfect timing, perfect words. I trusted the process.
And that's so huge.
If I had not trusted the process, I would have never met Mike. The timing of us, and I would never recommend to anyone listening that you jump into a relationship right after you get divorced. But for me, my relationship had been over for so long, even though I was divorced probably like a month and a half before Mike and I met. I was emotionally divorced for much longer.
Right. You had.
And so,
because when was your heart? So the timeline, your heart surgery was?
Heart surgery was the end of 2012.
Right.
And then divorced in 2014.
Right. So you really had that whole 2 years of kind of even though before that you had the feelings of loneliness, that was kind of the reckoning for you, right?
It was definitely the wake-up call, for sure. And I think for our listeners, I would just, if you're thinking about this, it's not something that should be taken lightly. And it is a sad time. It is, it is next to losing a child, divorce is the most stressful situation anyone can ever go through. So it is not to be taken lightly. And it is sad. I mean, it's the death of a relationship.
Yeah.
And so it is very sad, and especially if there are children involved. But I think, as far as breaking things down into, if you're thinking about this might be something you're considering, first and foremost, I'm a huge proponent of therapy.
Absolutely.
That is something that I did before the divorce, is I was in therapy, because I feel like you need that other person to talk to. You
Who's
can't,
objective.
that's not a friend, that's not a
Right.
family member.
Oh, yeah.
You need someone that's objective and that can really shed light on what is going on. So that is something that I definitely think, if you are not in therapy, or you don't have a life coach or somebody that can give you that other perspective, that would be the first step that I would take. And then something that I think is really important, and this is not something that I did, but looking back, I would definitely encourage people that after you make, step one, find that therapist or that life coach. Step two, and I will add to that list, an attorney.
Yeah.
You need a good divorce attorney.
That's right. That's right.
Now, once you make that decision, from then on, so that first step, that's the emotional step you're going to make. That's an emotional filled step. Not saying you won't have emotions in the future. You will. However, they need to be very controlled, because from that point on, especially, you're in midlife, you have retirement accounts, financially, there's a lot going on, more so than if you're divorcing in your 20s, if you've just been married a couple years. It really needs to be a business transaction. And I heard someone explain it like this, and I was like, gosh, that really is a really good way to look at it. It is a business transaction from that point on, because if not, we all know emotions can get the best of us. And you want to make smart decisions, because these decisions can affect the rest of your life.
It's like you're saying, there are these two parts of divorce. There is the relational breakup, which is where the real grief is, right?
Yes,
Where you've
absolutely.
broken
Yes.
your love has shifted into something else. You have to
Yes.
grieve, and you have to deal with all the emotions of the relationship breaking apart. Alongside that, what makes it hard is you have all of the parts of marriage that are kind of like the business, the household,
Yes.
the assets, all that part. And I will say, I saw someone I know, as they were going through a divorce, she really had a really strong friend show up with her at her attorney's meetings, to just help her make sure she was hearing clearly, because her emotions were very present all the way through. And she was like, I just need to make sure I hear clearly, because I don't want to cave and not make put up the quote fight I need to for my children. And I thought that was so wise, because you do sometimes see people kind of just cower and fold because they're so heartbroken.
Right.
And it just makes sense, because it's so hard. But at the same time, it's like, if you don't have somebody kind of stand in that gap with you, then you're going to have to redo. I mean, I don't know. You just don't want to have to go back into all that. It's like you kind of, so I would say, as a person who has just been on the periphery of a lot of people close to me that divorced, I think the way I saw it go best for people is to have someone trustworthy and steady with you when you go see your attorney, even when you go to mediation. If you do mediation, just have somebody that can be a stand in the gap person for you.
Yes.
That's really solidly on your team.
Right. Because it takes the emotions out of it. Because it really, I mean, the bottom line is, you've got to you're going to have a long life after this, and your children are as well. And you need to make sure that everyone is okay, including you. And so it's,
and you just want it to be clean afterwards,
yes,
so that there's no ambiguity, because there will be ambiguity even with all the rules in place that you set together, and I shouldn't say rules, but the agreements.
right.
And there still will be confusion, and you'll have to sort through that too.
Yes.
So as clear as it can be, I feel like.
Absolutely.
Because that even happens, right? Like after somebody dies, you
Yes.
know, and so that is why, like when you said divorce is a death of something.
Right. It is the death of a love story.
Yeah.
You
and
know,
you do need that clarity.
You really do. And so it's, not to simplify it at all, because it is not simple and it is tough, but you will get through it. And, you've got to go through those dark times to see the light. And there is light, you realize so much about yourself when you go through these difficult times, and that's just part of it. And I heard someone say, and I thought this was really beautiful, is growth is the significant gift of the pain of divorce. And that really, to me, that wraps up my experience with it, that I grew in so many ways. And it was hard, and it was really a difficult time, but through it came a beautiful part of who I am that I would have never been without the divorce. And also, I've met Mike, and and have his family and his 3 beautiful children who I now consider my children as well, and that's something that I would love for us to do an episode on later, is blended families.
Oh yeah.
Because I feel like his ex and I and her new husband, I feel like we have truly made the absolute best of this situation, and we all co-parent very well, which is, it's a really beautiful thing to be a part of. And it's like, wow, this can, no, it's not all, rosebuds, but at the same time, we have made the absolute best out of it. And I think that the children I know they appreciate it. Now that they're older, they truly look at our relationship with each other, and they're like, wow, I think really appreciate the effort that we've taken, and just the respect that we have for each other.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. I feel like the people I've seen with parents who are divorced that are willing to do that, it's, I can't even say enough positive about it. Like, not only does it affect you in a healthy way, and your new marriages and your lives and respect among the adults, but obviously for the kids in a huge way. But even just as it expands out, like what you give your kids, even with like their friendships and who they can invite to their celebrations, because you're going to show up supportive and show up. And so it just doesn't create like this large, it doesn't have to be the massive ripple.
Right.
But I feel like when the parents have a lot of like tension, and then the kids
so much
awkward,
animosity.
Yeah. Like, I can't invite everybody to my graduation party because I have to have 2 separate ones because my parents can't get along.
Yeah,
Do I invite people to both? And it happens.
It does. It happens so often.
But I see like if there's a way to reconcile, and sometimes it has to be that way because the divorce is because there was such a rip, So sometimes it just needs to be separate.
Right.
But if it's going to be together, if there can be that equanimity, it's so nice. One of our friends, I used to love that all his parents came to everything.
Yeah.
And I don't even think at first I even knew. That
who belonged to who, and
because everybody just got along so great. And I'm
right.
like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen, because growing up, I didn't know divorces like that.
Right. It's so great.
Yeah.
But
really my brother and his wife are the same way. I love it when I go see my nieces perform, when we go to any celebration, everybody's there.
Yep.
It's so much. I love it.
I mean, we usually sit together, and, when they played high school sports, we would sit in the stands together, and they purposely did that because they were like, if they look up, we want them to look up just once. and not have to look up, okay, there's mom, where's dad? You know, they would look up and we were all together, which was great.
Yeah.
So one last thing that I just want to kind of close with is when we shift the view of looking at the other person to looking at ourselves and making changes within us. I think it's really difficult when we're placing blame, which is really super easy to do when we're going through a divorce, especially if you're the one.
It's easy to do all the time.
It is, especially the one if you're initiating it, you know, because if you're initiating it, well, obviously there are things that you would want to change in that other person. But I think to really focus and look back on ourselves, what role did I play in this? Because no matter what's happened in your marriage, no matter what, you have a role in what has happened and how it ended in divorce. And so I think to be really honest with yourself and look at yourself and what role you played, I think is really, it can be the hardest step to make, but it can also be the one that is going to cause the most growth. And it also affects your future relationships.
100%. Yeah.
And so, and that's what, you know, and that's what your future is. And so I would just encourage, you know, those that are going through really difficult times to really, you know, get into therapy, talk to somebody, and just make that decision. But once you make that decision, you know, to go with it and realize there is light on the other end. And
I feel like whenever we decide to do that look inside, number one, it, like you said, gives you such a better foundation for future relationships, but also it reestablishes trust within yourself,
right,
and gives you back that connection to that voice that I think is a gift from God that's in us all, our intuition, that guiding voice that gives us those nudges, that reminds us of what, you know, in the middle of everything, we'll get this quiet nudge, and it puts you back in touch with that. Because I feel like when we get really in turmoil relationally, whether it's with a marriage, a family member,
a
or
friendship,
children, that it can throw us off. And so I hear you saying, come back to yourself,
come back to
find
yourself.
center again, and like let yourself heal from the inside out. And I feel like your kids also see that,
right?
And that what is really cool about being a parent is your kids will heal partly by osmosis. Just by you doing the work for yourself, you're automatically gifting that to them,
right?
And I do think that is like a massive gift of parenting,
right?
That you
and
get double dipping.
Yes, absolutely. Know? And you're showing your children that you've got to love yourself before anyone else can love you. You've got to love yourself.
Yeah. And they're not going to do that by you telling them. They're going to do that by you showing them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. They listen so much more through actions. It really is amazing. So,
yeah. Well, Jennifer, thank you. Your story is so incredible, and it's so nice of you to be open enough to share. But it really is so just encouraging and inspiring to have a voice like yours that will speak about it.
Right.
And you are at a point where you can have a healed conversation about it. And so I think friends out there, the reason Jennifer sounds so healthy is because she's healed. And I think that sometimes we talk about things when they're still
fresh
in the mess.
Too fresh.
Yeah. And so it's really nice to hear from people when they're on the other side, so you know that you have another side too.
Yes.
If you're still in the thick of it. So
absolutely.
So thanks for being with us today.
Yes, everyone take care. Make sure you share this episode if you know of someone that's going through a really tough time and thinking about divorce. You know, hopefully it can be healing for others.
Absolutely.
As well.
And let us know if you have questions or comments, or you know, share your own story with us. This community is so important to us, and we love hearing your feedback after episodes and how it encouraged you or helped you. So
we
want to
join our Facebook page, and we've gotten hundreds of people. So I'm super excited and can't wait until it's thousands.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
But y'all go out and have a great week.
All right. Bye. So many.